Hey, my name's Spencer from ETHGlobal Labs. We are a design and development agency in the crypto space, and we've been spending the past little bit of time working in the Nouns ecosystem as community contributors. Um, Today, I want to talk about the relatively new Nouns ERC20 token, which I think came out just maybe 2 weeks ago or maybe even less. I want to kind of talk about it, give an overview of it, kind of why it's built and what it does, give an overview of the contract interface, how to interact with it, and then give some kind of demos of what's already been built. And then I think at the end I have some, tips for what I think, you could build upon in the hackathon. So I guess the goal of this is to hopefully kind of inspire people to build on top of, this new ERC20 in the Nouns ecosystem. And yeah, so um, before we kind of talk about that new ERC20, I just want to start by kind of introducing the Nouns NFT. I think probably if you're watching this video, you're already pretty familiar, or at least somewhat with what Nouns is. But if not, basically it's an experimental NFT governed DAO attempting to bootstrap identity, community governance, and a treasury that can be used by the community. So one, pseudo randomly generated noun is auctioned off every day, and that'll be forever. And basically the auction funds go into the treasury. Anybody can then create a proposal to build something. Generally, public good funding basically comes from this treasury. And then, the DAO votes upon whether or not your proposal should be funded. And basically, one noun equals one vote. So if you hold a noun, you get to vote and say what you like or don't like about a proposal and vote for or against it. You can learn more about what Nouns is at Nouns.wtf website, which is their official front end. I think it does a pretty good job of kind of explaining it in more details, and also there's some cool videos there that kind of go through a few different things, and you can kind of see what's been funded and learn about the ecosystem. And then you can also explore Nouns on NounSwap, which is a product that ETHGlobal Labs is working on. And basically, I'm going to talk about it a little bit more because NounSwap is building on top of the $ or ERC20 Nouns token that I'm going to talk about today. But here's just a few screenshots from NounSwap. So this is kind of what a noun looks like, and this is in part of the Noun Explorer. And then, clicking in on one of the noun profile pages, you can see a noun has these 5 traits, which are, pseudo randomly generated from a seed. So each noun, is unique and different. Yeah, so I don't want to spend too much time on the NFT side of things. Again, go to the, official front end, and I think it has some good information about nouns there. And you can go to NounSwap and kind of play around and see, what nouns exist. I want to spend the majority of the time talking about this new kind of ERC20 token. For the rest of this video, we're going to call it $Nouns. It's a pretty confusing name because obviously Nouns is the ERC721 or NFT, which is, the art that you see above. And this other token is called $Nouns is the ERC20. So when I say nouns, generally referring to the NFT, I'll try to make sure I say, the nouns NFT. And if I say $Nouns, I'm referring to the ERC20. So hopefully that doesn't confuse anybody too much, at least. So what is this ERC20? Basically, it's fractionalized noun ownership, and that's its purpose. So it basically offers a more affordable way to get into a noun, and similar to how people, stack sats, in Bitcoin, you can now stack, $nouns to eventually become a noun holder. So, each $ noun is worth some fraction of a full noun, and the exchange rate is basically one noun is worth 1 million $nouns. So in this nouns ERC20 contract, any noun can be deposited for 1 million of these $ nouns, and conversely, 1 million of the $ nouns can be redeemed to acquire any noun held in the nouns contract. One thing to note about building on top of this $ nouns for in the nouns ecosystem is that the $ nouns contracts were built by the Verbs team, which is the team that works on a lot of the core protocol for nouns. But it has not been audited because the audit proposal, which you can find in this link here, was voted against by the DAO. It was a contentious prop, but anyhow, some community developers ended up deploying it. Anyways, it is a relatively simple contract. It's basically a standard ERC20 with a few, special functions to support, adding in this kind of NFT backed or fractional ownership of an NFT. But nonetheless, do know that it hasn't been audited. But that being said, it does hold 18 nouns right now. So there is, a decent amount of usage thus far. And again, I think I'll share this Notion page, so anybody who's watching this video will be able to see this. It'll probably basically look like exactly the same with maybe a few more details here and there, but you'll be able to kind of click into the links and learn more. Okay, so let's kind of dig into it. So yeah, I guess what you need to know, one noun is 1 million nouns. That's the most important thing. So let's dig into kind of what the contract looks like. So as I said, it's a standard ERC20 interface with a few functions to specifically support, interacting with the Nouns NFT. Those three are namely deposit, redeem, and swap. The full token spec can be found here. I'm not going to go through it all. I've basically parsed out the pieces which are most important for a developer to kind of build on top of the $Nouns contract. Yeah, if you want to kind of dig into it more, and I think there's a bit more context in there as well. So it is deployed on mainnet and base. I have those addresses here, and it is also on testnets. Definitely on Sepolia testnet. I don't know if it's deployed on base Sepolia or not. I've asked around a little bit. If not, I'll deploy it there before the hackathon. And if you come to this page, you'll have the updated address. So anyways, yeah, we'll get into the bridging in a little bit, between mainnet and base, but it is just using the OP-Stack's native bridge. So yeah, digging into these three functions that I mentioned. So the first one is deposit. Basically, this is how you basically take a noun NFT and put it into the $Nouns ERC20 contract and get these $Nouns in return. So the contract takes in an array of token IDs, and basically each noun that the token ID corresponds to gets transferred from message.sender into the nouns contract. And then in exchange for that, basically, 1 million times the number of NFTs they're sending in get minted to the message.sender of the $nouns. So again, one noun is 1 million $nouns. So this is basically how you deposit your noun and get $nouns. The only requirement here is that all nouns in the token IDs must be owned by message.sender, and the nouns contract must be approved to transfer them. So basically, to facilitate this, the owner of the noun needs to approve the $Nouns ERC20 contract before calling this function, otherwise it will revert. The second function is redeem. So this is how you basically take your $nouns and get nouns back. Again, it takes a token ID list of nouns. In this case, these are nouns inside of the ERC20 contract that you want to basically redeem your $Nouns ERC20 for. So it burns, again, 1 million times the number of nouns that you're trying to, redeem your $Nouns for. And it burns those tokens that are owned by message.sender. So, and it transfers basically, all the nouns with the token IDs from the $Nouns contract to message.sender. So message.sender basically is transferring the $Nouns ERC20 in, and they're getting the noun back. The requirements here is, first of all the nouns and the token IDs must be owned by the $Nouns contract. Because obviously they're being, the $Nouns are being redeemed, so the NFTs are coming out during this process, so they must have been deposited at a previous time. And obviously the message.sender needs to have, a sufficient balance of $nouns. If they're only going to redeem for one noun, then that's 1 million, but obviously 1 million times the number of nouns they're redeeming, which is token ID.length. Then the next function, which we're the most excited about, as I mentioned earlier, at Paperclip Labs, we're working on a product called Noun Swap, is the swapping. So this is basically an optimization, basically over depositing and redeeming. So if you think about it, I can deposit one noun for 1 million of these ERC20 $Nouns, and then I can redeem those $Nouns for any other noun that lives in this $Nouns contract. So it's permissionless, basically swapping that this enables, and the swap function is basically just an optimization on top of doing the deposit and redeeming in 2 steps. So it swaps all the input nouns from message.sender for token in nouns, from message.sender to token out nouns from the ERC20 contract. Again, yeah, optimization over depositing and redeeming. And then the requirements here is obviously the number of nouns you're swapping input in must be equal to the number of nouns that you're trying to swap out for. All the nouns that are going in, similar to the requirement for deposit, must be approved. So the NFT must be, the ERC20 contract must be approved in the nouns NFT to spend or move or transfer the NFT from message.sender. So message.sender needs to go to the nouns NFT contract and approve the $Nouns contract for their noun. And again, all of them need to be, otherwise it will revert. And then similar to the redeeming requirement, all the output nouns that are the outputs of the swap need to be owned by the $nouns contract. So they must have been deposited prior to when the swap happens. Cool. So I hope that all makes sense. It is relatively simple. And again, basically, everything else about an ERC20 also exists on this contract. So, approving for the ERC20, transferring, and everything you can do with an ERC20, you can do with $nouns. So it's kind of like a financialization of nouns in a sense, because now you can go bring this $nouns and go do DeFi things with it, for example. So yeah, a few different use cases. I think the financialization one is definitely interesting as well. So I guess, yeah, what's already been built on Nouns? So as I mentioned a few times, Noun Swap. So we built inside of Noun Swap the ability to basically deposit, redeem, and swap nouns. I'll actually give a demo here of Noun Swap. I think this is Sepolia testnet. So sepolia.nounswap.wtf. And if you're gonna build on $nouns or anything in the Nouns ecosystem on Sepolia, this is probably the best place to come to actually purchase nouns in the auction. I don't think there's any other front ends that are on Sepolia for the auction to actually acquire nouns. So anyways, I'll go through kind of what I'll put these side by side, and we can kind of walk through these function calls and what's going to happen under the hood here. So if you go to the convert page, this is for $nouns. There's some information about it on the side here. I think we've kind of talked about a lot of that already. And there's some useful links here. The token contract addresses, and basically we try to compile every link that you might need with regards to nouns or as a user of NounSwap to figure out what you want to do. So this is useful also if you want a quick way to access the contracts or whatever. So let's go through an example here. I have a bunch of nouns on Sepolia testnet already. Let's do this moose. So I'm going to deposit my moose noun, number 511, for 1 million of these, $nouns. So if I go ahead and try to do this, the very first thing you're going to notice is it's asking me to approve noun 551. So this will give the nouns ERC20 contract permission to deposit my noun. So this is calling the nouns NFT contract. It's calling the approve function, and it's approving the nouns ERC20 contract. If that makes sense. So this is going to satisfy this requirement. If we don't do this and we just try to call deposit immediately, it would revert. So we'll go through this first step, and we can take a look at the transaction here. Hopefully this goes pretty quick. Okay, I'm not going to go ahead yet. I just want to show you the transaction that just happened. Once Etherscan loads over here. Come on. Huh. I don't know why it's so slow. It's been... Oh, there we go. Okay, so what you're going to see here is on this 0x4c4 contract, which is the nouns NFT contract on Sepolia testnet, I've just called the approve function for my token 511, and this is the contract. This is the noun $nouns ERC20 contract address. So I'm saying that $nouns now has permission to move noun 511. So the next step is I can go ahead and do the actual confirm the conversion, which in this case is just going to call the deposit. So I can go ahead and confirm that. So again, it's just going to call the deposit. In this case, it's only one noun, so there's going to be one noun in this array of token IDs inside of the deposit function. And you basically pretty simply, it's just going to deposit this noun and give me back 1 million, ERC20 $nouns. So kind of we'll wait for that to go, and I'll show you the contract. I'll show you the function execution for that as well. Oh, missed it. So, as I said here, basically, so this time it's calling the ERC20 contract $nouns, and it's calling the deposit function. And it's, again, an array, but it only has one piece of data in it, which is, noun 511. So you see that noun 511 just got transferred from my development wallet address into the $nouns contract address, and in return I've just been minted 1 million of the $nouns. It's called test on Sepolia testnet, but this is the $sign nouns contract on Sepolia testnet. Cool. So basically, yeah, that's this is a deposit flow. The redeem flow is basically the exact same thing, except there is no approval that's required before we do the redeem. We'll talk about the bridging in a little bit, but I'll just show you really quickly. So redeeming, basically, sending $1 million sign nouns, which I now have because I just deposited it. I think this wallet has kind of a lot more than a million as well. And basically, there we go. Sorry, not sure what happened there. The request took a long time for some reason. I'll have to figure that out. But basically, depositing $1 million or redeeming $1 million sign nouns for any noun held in the $sign nouns contract. So we basically go fetch, what are all the nouns in this contract? So let's say I want to, take the popsicle head. And in this case, there's only one transaction. There is no approval required. We've just met the requirement already because, this noun is in that contract. And then if I go ahead and confirm, and we can take a peek at this transaction, it'll basically be calling redeem with, noun 548 as the payload. And we're going to see that noun 548 got transferred from the $sign nouns contract into my wallet. And then as well, the $sign nouns ERC20 tokens, 1 million of them should get transferred into the, or burned in this case. Cool. While that loads, I'll also show the swap process really quickly. So let's take a peek. So yeah, if you filter by instant swap, these are basically the swappable nouns that are basically living in that $sign nouns contract. So I'll pop back over this transaction really quick, and then we can close it and get a bigger screen here. But you'll see that I just called the redeem function with 548, and what you can see here is the $sign nouns contract just transferred 548 to my wallet, and I just burned 1 million of the $sign nouns. So that's the redeeming. And then the swapping, basically, let's say I really like this cherry noun. I'll go ahead and do an instant swap. I can choose a noun that I want to swap, give up, basically. So I'll give up the thumbs up noun, and I can go ahead and swap. Now, again, I need to approve, similarly to the deposit, the noun 508, and I'll go ahead and do that. And then the next transaction will basically be just calling the swap function with the input of 508 and the output of 518. And what we're going to see is that 508, and I will go ahead and approve that as well. What we'll see is that 508 is going to go from my wallet into the $sign nouns contract, and then 518 is going to come into the $sign nouns contract and back into my wallet. So this is a permissionless swap of a NFT, of the nouns NFT, which is really cool. This is the first time that it's been possible to swap permissionlessly. So that loads quickly, and then as I said, basically it's just calling the swap function, deposit IDs, withdraw IDs. I'll update this. Draw IDs. Yeah, I'll update this everywhere for you guys, just to make sure that it actually matches the parameter names. But basically that's it. So if you look at the data, basically depositing 508 got 518 back. So if you look at what happened to the nouns, 508 went from my wallet into the $sign nouns contract. 518 went from the $sign nouns contract into my wallet. So from my perspective, I gave up 508 and I got 518 back, which is great. I just permissionlessly swapped my noun. Okay, cool. So that is NounSwap. All the code is open source for NounSwap. So if you have any questions or wondering how this works or how the function calls look, you can take a look on GitHub. And if you go into the hooks here and inside of the transactions, you can see how each transaction kind of works. So if we look at the deposit transaction, in our case, we're doing a few extra things because we store the transaction context and whatever. But you could basically, rather than just assembling the raw request and calling send transaction, you could use send transaction hook from WAGMI and VM. So basically that's it. So this is how I'm constructing the payload and things like that. I think you can kind of dig through and see how that's done in NounSwap. Again, all open source, so that should be pretty straightforward to figure out. Again, the contracts are not overly complicated. So yeah, the next cool thing that was built is product called by Nouns. This is more on the data side of things. I think NounSwap is the only one that actually interacts with the contracts. The other ones that I'm going to show now are more on the data side. So this is basically a leaderboard of noun $noun owners for mainnet. So you can basically see in this leaderboard, and then you can also see the daily volume of $nouns over time and unique buyers. I think, yeah. And then the other project that I know of building on $nouns is NounScan. So it's basically like EtherScan for nouns. It shows you all the interactions that are happening, I think, on base and mainnet, and also all the back nouns and new holders or whatnot. So yeah, I think the next thing. So that's a few projects that are built on $nouns now. I'll kind of talk about some other ideas that I have later on that I think could be good hackathon projects. But the next thing is about liquidity pool. So this is an ERC20. $nouns is in the ERC20. So it has been pooled with ETH on both mainnet and base. I put the links here for the Uniswap pools. Most of the liquidity is on base, and overall, there's just such small liquidity right now of $nouns that if you want to swap like any meaningful amount, there's just a huge amount of slippage. I think if you reverse this direction, you get something like 80% slippage when you do 2 million or something like that when I was trying earlier. But there is LPs on both mainnet and base. So those are the links there if you want to kind of explore those and actually get in to buy a few fractional pieces of nouns yourself. This is probably the best way to do it. Yeah, the next thing brings us to bridging. So as I mentioned earlier, so $nouns is deployed on both Ethereum mainnet as well as base. The PR and the only bridge that exists for $nouns right now is a superchain bridge. So the PR to actually add this into the superchain is linked here, but you can basically just see those addresses that I've linked prior to this as well. You can use Superbridge to do the superchain bridge, to interact with the superchain bridge, and you can bridge $nouns to and from base. But one thing to note is because the only bridge that's available is the native bridge, you will need to wait the 7-day optimistic challenge window when you bring $nouns back to mainnet. And the other thing to note is that nouns can only be redeemed on mainnet. So, their functionality in terms of redeeming, swapping, and withdrawing or depositing is mainnet only. And then I think people are basically bringing them to base because it's cheaper to interact in terms of LPing them and doing things with them, like rewarding, community contributors and things like that with them happen on base. If you are interested in bridging, Base has some examples of using the native bridge here, basically for both ETH and ERC20, to basically programmatically using that bridge and building that into your project. Yeah, it kind of brings us to kind of the end. I guess some tips for the hackathon is, well, you can buy Sepolia nouns for testing in the auction on NounSwap. So you can go ahead and place a bid here, put 0.01 ETH, and you'll win it. I think the auction times are like 2 minutes or something, so you can pick up a few nouns pretty quickly. You'll need these to basically start, interacting with $nouns because I think most of the liquidity on Sepolia is just in EOAs. And so basically, if you want to start, get some $nouns, this is the best way to do it. Just buy, a noun in the auction on Sepolia and then deposit it into that contract. Again, you can use NounSwap for that, or if you're, building your own things, then use that. Recommendations not necessarily related to $nouns, but just kind of a recommendation for, the hackathon. Getting a DApp, up and running quickly. I think Coinbase has been doing really good work on their build on-chain apps template. So it's an Next.js project with Tailwind CSS, WAGMI VM baked in. I think it uses Coinbase Smart Wallet. You could also probably plug in RainbowKit or Family, whatever you want to use, or ConnectKit pretty easily. Also has Foundry and Anvil, so it's just a really good starting point, I think, for making your repo. Gets a lot of the boilerplate out of the way. You can keep and get rid of what you do and don't want. That's my recommendation. But just generally, our projects we generally use RainbowKit, WAGMI, and VM to do all the interactions with with wallets as well as on the blockchain. And the Foundry for any Solidity or smart contract work as well. But you can use hard hat or anything else you want. But yeah, it'll just basically save you maybe like 45 minutes or whatever in the hackathon. And yeah, some ideas, I guess. Some ideas, I guess, in terms of what to build on $ nouns next. I think one thing that I think is really cool is the governance aspect of it. So they're not governance enabled right now. So you have all these nouns that are sitting in the $nouns pool. Unfortunately, it's not possible to vote with those nouns. So as a $nouns owner or a fractionalized noun owner, I'm not actually able to cast my fractional vote. There is another project, $Noggles, that's kind of working on this. Their proposal did pass. I'm not sure when it's going to be out, but so they're kind of working on a more governance-enabled ERC20. But I think it would be cool to explore like what can be added to $nouns or on top of it to enable this in some way. Like what does the MVP for that look like? And yeah, I mean, if you come up with something pretty interesting that is obviously fair and safe, I could see it potentially getting adopted for $nouns. So I think that's something cool to explore. Is like how do you upgrade? How do you put a layer on top of $nouns to basically what is the minimal layer you can put on top of $nouns to enable governance? I think because $nouns is immutable, when you transfer that noun in, you lose any delegations or whatever in terms of governance. So we'll basically need to be like a fork of $nouns contract. But I think it wouldn't be that hard just to enable some governance. You run into some tricky things around probably you need to put the nouns in a different contract for each one just due to the way that governance works. But if you're interested, I think you need to dig into nouns governance and you can try to look through that and figure that out. Another problem is, I mentioned there's a liquidity issue. There's just not much liquidity around in $nouns right now. So if you wanted to trade any significant amount, there's just a crazy amount of slippage. For small volumes, it's fine, but definitely, there's only 18 nouns positive, so there's about 18 million, $nouns in existence, and I don't know what percentage is actually NLP, but maybe 50% or whatever. So fixing the liquidity issue, I don't know how you do that exactly, but one thing is just basically getting more liquidity there, attracting more people into $nouns, creating a way to get people into the nouns ecosystem through $nouns by thinking about some clever distribution mechanisms or reward mechanisms. I'm not exactly sure, but I think that's something that could be built off of. Better bridging, again, because the liquidity is just so small. A lot of the liquidity bridges just won't work right now, and yeah, I think better bridging. This 7-day challenge window definitely sucks, and I think a lot of the people that actually brought their nouns $nouns a base maybe didn't necessarily realize that, because I was talking to a few users and they're like, oh, I need to wait 7 days to bring this back. That's crazy. So yeah, I think if you could think about a solution there. Again, I think this is a pretty complex topic to solve, probably in a hackathon, but and maybe better bridging just comes with better liquidity. So that's you can tackle it through that front, and then look at what it takes to basically create a liquidity bridge, or explore what CCIP or different type of bridging methods would look like. And then, yeah, deeper data analytics. I think there's been 2 dashboards built. I think maybe somebody else is working on some other stuff, but I think, yeah, it's just cool to basically see, all the data around $nouns is useful to know what people are using it for. If people are using it, could see like a subgraph being built for it. Could be cool. Yeah, it could be interesting. And then, yeah, if you're interested more on the DeFi side of things, what can you use this for in the DeFi space that it has interesting use cases. And yeah, one thing is obviously, our arbitrage bot to balance liquidity pools. It's kind of, boring, but, be creative. Like, how can you use this in DeFi more? And I think that's a really big unlock here is you can now, with fractionalized, NFT ownership, you can now do a lot of DeFi things with NFTs. So that's the most exciting thing for me. Aside from probably swapping, is what kind of DeFi primitives can you bring nouns into now that you weren't able to before? So yeah, hopefully this was useful, and I'm excited to see people kind of build on dollar sign nouns. If you have any questions or anything, yeah, you can feel free to reach out to me at spencerperkins.eth on a webcast, or you can go to our Paperclip Labs website, and I think you can send us a DM or email here, and check that out. But yeah, otherwise, hopefully this is really helpful, and good luck with the hackathon. Again, I'll publish the link to this guy as well with this video, so you'll be able to kind of look through and see those docs, and refer back to it. So cool, yeah, good luck, and thanks.